It's easy as we read the Bible to forget that this is not only a narrative, it is actually a beautifully written book. Welcome to Walking Through the Word for today, and we're in John chapter 13, and we are in the kind of the moment of decision for Judas. And I spoke yesterday about how Jesus has orchestrated all of these things so that the prophecies could be fulfilled and so that his time would come. And up until this point, in a good story, the tension has been building. The tension has been building. And here we're about to get the thing that's really going to ratchet up the tension. And the writer of this letter, John, does a really good job of creating a very compelling story. He has built things up. He has established who Jesus is, because remember, that's the point of this, that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, that Jesus Christ is the Messiah. So he's built all of this up, but now we've come to the point where we've already been alluded to all the way back in chapter 6, that one of the disciples is the devil. And Jesus says that flat out here, as we're reading in this section in verse 21, very truly I tell you, one of you is going to betray me. And the disciples stared at one another at a loss to know which of them he meant. And one of them, the disciple whom Jesus loved. Now, who is this beloved disciple? We'll talk about that. We'll get to that here in a minute. But what we're seeing here is that this disciple had what he viewed as a special relationship with Jesus, a very close relationship, in many ways, maybe even considered the ideal disciple. And he also, though, apparently had a close relationship with Peter, because in the very next verse we hear Simon Peter motioned to this disciple. Basically, he's like, gave him a head nod, like, hey, go. Ask him who it is. So, leaning back against Jesus, because remember, they don't sit in chairs like we did. They reclined around a table, often with pillows and cushions and kind of a U-shaped thing. And so they would often sit back to back to support one another. And this is the disciple that is supporting Jesus. And he goes, Lord, who is it? Now, we've had a couple of silent things that have been going on here. The silent motion, the disciples looking at one another, and we kind of get another silent response. And Jesus answered, it is the one to whom I will give this piece of bread when I have dipped it in the dish. Then, dipping the piece of bread, he gave it to Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot. Now, this is an interesting thing, because this symbolizes a couple of different things. When you eat with someone back then, you were symbolizing approval of this person, of admiration and love for this person. It wasn't just you didn't dine with just anyone. This is why you often saw the Jewish leaders not dine with Gentiles, because they didn't want to not only sully themselves, but they didn't want to signify that they approved of these individuals. Not only was Jesus sitting with a man who was supposed to be one of his followers, but in some ways, what Jesus did when he passed the bread was kind of a contract with Judas, saying, okay, you're about to do this. You're about to go and do what you do. And it says that as soon as Judas took the bread, Satan entered into him. Now, we've talked about Satan before. Satan is a very powerful entity, okay? He is malevolent. There is nothing good about Satan. Everything that he does, he's looking to destroy, to kill, to wreck. He doesn't sleep. His entire focus is on destruction of us, his precious, God's precious creation. Satan can absolutely demons can possess people who are not followers of Christ. They cannot possess Christians, because Christians already have the indwelt Holy Spirit. There's no room for Satan or any of his minions in believers of Christ, though Satan can certainly influence our and build into our sinful ways of thinking. But in this, it explicitly talks about how Satan enters into him. See, Satan's not passing this off to someone else. Satan's not passing this off to some minor person. Satan is entering in. Satan himself is entering in. And so Jesus then tells him, what you're about to do quickly. These are the last words that Jesus speaks to Judas. And in many ways, this is Judas being kicked out. Jesus is basically signifying to Judas, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to do with those who are still mine. And you are not mine. And so Jesus dismisses Judas and he leaves. Now, obviously, the disciples didn't understand what was happening. But in verse 30, as soon as Judas had taken the bread, he went out, and it was night. Remember, evil happens in darkness. Sin is symbolic in the darkness. It's not accidental that John uses the night to show what's going on. This is when the darkness is going to happen. This is when sin and Satan do their work the best. But now Jesus has the remaining 11, the men who will build his church with him. And starting now, he's going to give his last thoughts, if you will, during and in the Garden of the Last Supper.